Welcome back to the studio, Gridiron fans. I am Blake Baker. He is Connor Mills. We're both FAC reporters, and we're bringing you our second edition of the Frontier Athletic Conference Power Rankings. We did our first one after week 4, so naturally 2 weeks later, we're bringing it to you again. A little bit of shake-up in the middle, but not at the top. So we'll start it off again with our number 1 ranking, the Jackson Ironmen, 5-1, a little bit of a step back 2 weeks ago against rival Wheelersburg, but a big win on Friday night against Washington Courthouse for their first FAC win this year, and they're really riding that run game hard, Connor.
Absolutely, Blake. You know, Blake McCoy has 829 yards so far this season. That's 8 rushing yards per rush. Over the past 2 weeks, Jackson has 578 total yards. 70% of that is coming from the ground game.
Yeah, so they're really, like I said, riding that rushing attack hard, but going forward on offense, they're going to need to put a little bit more emphasis on the passing attack. Jared Ischenhauer, their quarterback, has only attempted 10 passes total the past 2 weeks, but that's okay. They're really utilizing that run game, and their defense is playing stellar. Only 85 points given up all year, just 14 per game. So yeah, Jackson's still number 1 in our power rankings, number 1 in the FAC for right now, and that moves us into our number 2 spot.
Number 2, coming up from 4 is Chillicothe, and Blake, I believe they're a little bit mad at you after ranking them at 4.
Yeah, after our first power rankings week 1, I did rank these Cavaliers at number 4, but they certainly have proved me wrong the last 2 weeks as they put up big numbers.
Absolutely. They scored 85 points over the past 2 weeks, and you know, they've converted 60% of their third down conversions.
Yeah, they are averaging 8.5 yards per play over the past 2 weeks, and Brandon Moffmer has had a lot to do with that. 438 rushing yards and 636 total yards just in the past 2 games. But one area of improvement going forward, Connor, what do you have?
I'd say they need to improve pressuring the quarterback. You know, if they can get to the quarterback, they can win a couple more games and put them in better situations.
That defense playing well enough for them to win, and that offense is really coming through for them. Coming in at number 3 after being ranked number 2 a couple of weeks ago, they just lost to Chillicothe. They gave up 42 points as the Hillsboro Indians.
Yeah, that's right, Blake. The defense was not too great. They were susceptible to long drives, 2 in particular, 1 of 13 and another of 11. You know, having those long drives tired out the defense and allowed Chillicothe to score all those points.
Yeah, and on offense, Hillsboro didn't fare much better either. Mason Swain, their main contributor, was held to just 2 rushing yards on 7 attempts, and no rusher had more than 50 yards. So a Hillsboro offense that put up 245 yards and a half just some weeks ago finished with 239 total yards on Friday night, and that certainly was not the right answer for them in their first conference game.
Dropping down to number 4 is Washington Courthouse. They're coming off of a 4-game losing streak and have averaged around 30 points a loss.
Yeah, they've given up 30 points on defense. They haven't really looked too good overall, but offensively, their main weapon is gone. Dylan Stewart has not played in the last 3 games, but through the first 3 games, he had 15 touchdowns and just about 1,200 yards, and not having that weapon has certainly hurt him.
Yeah, and Blake, you know, they've shown some bright spots. They've passed for 200 yards against Jackson just last week, and then a week before, they only had 180 total. So you see some improvement there, but not a lot.
Yeah, so the inconsistencies are hurting them offensively, and not having Stewart there, again, really making life hard for him out there in Washington Courthouse. Now in the number 5 spot in our rankings, still the same team from 2 weeks ago, but this time, that team's got a win.
Absolutely, that's Miami Trace, and in their first FAC conference game, they defeated McLean 46-0.
Yeah, that defense of the Panthers held Darius White, the main playmaker, on the Tigers to just 36 yards on the ground. And Tyler Taylor had a day on offense at the quarterback position, 9 for 12 passing, 134 yards, and 177 total yards against the Tigers.
And don't forget about Brady Wallace. Last game, he had 168 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Also had a 78-yard touchdown to put the game away against McLean.
Yeah, so that Panthers offense, even in the loss to Zanesville, showed a little bit of big play ability. We saw a highlight reel catch, and they've had the ability to create a little bit of turnovers on defense, and that's the reason they have a win to this point. Same cannot be said, though, about the McLean Tigers, who again are in our number 6 spot after being winless. A 46-0 spanking at the hands of Miami Trace, and they are really just struggling this year, Connor.
They are, but you know, one bright spot is Darius White. He has 401 yards rushing so far this season and 57 passing.
Yeah, the rest of the offense can't really seem to click, though. They haven't had another consistent playmaker step up to the plate. The offense hasn't accumulated over 300 yards in any game all season, and they have just 5 touchdowns the whole season, not even 1 per game. When you're struggling that bad on offense, it's really hard to win games. That'll do it for our Week 6 Power Rankings. We'll be back in Week 8 for another rundown of them. Until then, you can catch all of our midweek content and the content that appears on our show on woub.org/gridiron. And we'll be out at Hillsboro against Washington Courthouse on Friday night in terms of our FAC coverage. For the FAC, I'm Blake Baker, he's Connor Mills. We'll see you on Friday.